The signal cut through the void like a scream in a cathedral, raw, desperate, and meant for anyone still listening. High Seer Valthis stood over the ancient crystalline console, her violet skin damp with sweat, her hands trembling as she keyed in the final override. The last beacon, older than any of their databanks could explain, pulsed once, then flared outward in a ring of silent light. She watched it vanish into the stars, unsure if she just saved her people or damned them by crying out at all. Behind her, the dome of the citadel trembled under distant bombardment. The Razkari were drawing closer again. They moved like a wave, consuming forests, cities, oceans, leaving behind nothing but hissing spores and shattered stone. The Galactic Council had promised aid. Words, declarations, sympathies. But no ships. No soldiers. And no hope. Valthis pressed her fingers together and whispered a prayer to the old songs, though even the priests had long stopped pretending the gods were listening. Far across the galaxy, buried beneath layers of scorched atmosphere and magnetic storms, Earth's orbital AI defense net caught the pulse. At first, it flagged the signal as ancient, a relic of first contact-era transmission. Then it ran analysis, and something in its cold synthetic mind hesitated. The signal's contents were not strategic, not tactical. It was emotion, compressed and encoded. Fear. Sorrow. A mother's plea. A civilization's final cry. Within hours, the data reached the Arcbridge Assembly, Earth's shadowed council of exodiplomatic command. On a world long believed hostile and quarantined, there was movement. Commander Rhea Kale stood on the upper deck of the Deliverance, armored in matte black plating that shimmered like obsidian. Her eyes flicked through the incoming data, her jaw tightening. She'd fought on 13 planets, bled on 5, and buried her squadmates on more than she could remember. And still, this signal gnawed at her. Status on their location, she asked. Edge of Lyra's cradle, replied her lieutenant, a lean man with cybernetic eyes that flickered blue. Razkari infestation confirmed. Full hive behavior. No known allied presence. They're on their own. Rhea exhaled slowly. And the council? Silent. As usual. She turned back to the viewport. Earth had never been part of the council. Not truly. After the Terraform Wars and the Exodus Rebellions, most of the galaxy had written off humanity as a volatile species born of poison air and death-hardened evolution. Deathworlders, they whispered, creatures who survived worlds that should have killed them in infancy. But there were no gods here. Only teeth, fire, and choices. Prep the strike fleet, Rhea ordered. We leave within the hour. The Deliverance shuddered to life alongside 6 other ships, their hulls blackened from decades of war, engines humming with contained fury. The humans were coming not because it was strategic, not because it would earn them favor, but because someone had asked for help, and no one else had answered. 3 days later, above the smoking remnants of Varnari's outer colonies, Valthis stood among the surviving elders on the cliffs of Kael'thar, her ceremonial robes reduced to soot-stained threads. Fires licked at the horizon. The sky trembled with the low drone of swarm hives shifting above the clouds. A voice cut through the static of her communicator. Sharp. Alien. Human. This is Commander Kale of Earth's Expeditionary Force. We received your signal. Hold your position. Valthis blinked. The voice felt unreal, rough and edged like broken crystal. But the sky cracked a moment later with the arrival of fire. Ships broke through the atmosphere like falling stars, sleek, clawed things trailing contrails of ion fire. They didn't descend. They dove. From their hulls, black armored forms deployed in screaming packs, thrusters flaring, weapons igniting. They hit the ground with brutal precision, forming perimeters, unleashing a storm of plasma and kinetic fire that ripped through the chitinous masses of the Razkari. The Varnari had never seen war. Not like this. Rhea landed hard beside a crater, her visor retracting to reveal eyes like molten steel. Around her, her team moved with lethal grace. She didn't wait for greetings. Where's your central command node? Valthis, speechless, pointed toward the half-destroyed citadel spire. Rhea nodded once. Lieutenant. Establish defensive net. Varnari civilians inside the spire get priority evac. We're buying time. Valthis found her voice. You came. The council said. We're not the council, Rhea interrupted. We're human. And then she was gone, disappearing into the chaos. Valdis watched as the battle unfolded, not as a strategist or leader, but as a witness to something ancient and terrible. The Deathworlders didn't just fight. They adapted. They killed with precision but protected their wounded like sacred relics. One soldier was torn apart by a Razkari warbeast, only for another to charge headlong into the swarm, dragging the remains to safety and detonating a thermal charge that turned the battlefield into glass. They were monsters. They were heroes. They were the storm the Vanari had prayed for, without knowing the price. By nightfall, the swarm had retreated. Only ashes remained. Rhea sat beside a burning wreck, her armor scratched and blooded. A young Vanari child approached her, wide-eyed and trembling, clutching a broken family sigil. Rhea looked down, then slowly reached out, taking the child's hand in her own gauntlet. Behind her, the stars burned, and war drums echoed through the ruins. Valdis turned away, the last words of the beacon still echoing in her mind. Please. Anyone. And the Deathworlders had answered. The silence after the battle was louder than the gunfire. Commander Rhea Kale walked through the ruined courtyard of the Vanari citadel, her boots crunching over broken crystal and scorched stone. The once beautiful spires that crowned the city now lay in charred ruin, their ornate architecture melted into slag. Vanari citizens, slim, graceful beings with trembling eyes and silver-veined skin, watched from the shadows, their expressions a mixture of awe and unease. She understood that look. To them, the humans were both salvation and storm. Too late now to turn back. A familiar voice crackled in her ear. Third perimeter secure. Razkari scouts neutralized. Rhea tapped her comm. Understood, Lieutenant. Begin supply offload. We set up forward ops here. She looked up at the fractured sky, the haze of burning spores still clinging to the wind. Somewhere out there, more hives were gathering. The first wave had only tested the surface. The real swarm would come when the hives coordinated, when they adapted. Time was against them. High Seer Valdis approached cautiously, her ceremonial garb replaced with a fitted robe of woven armor strips, marked with the sigils of mourning. Her hands were clasped, as though unsure whether to offer thanks or apologize. They say your kind were born in fire, she said. Rhea didn't look at her. Close enough. I saw your soldiers pull wounded from burning wreckage, even as the Razkari charged again. Why risk yourselves? Rhea turned at that, eyes locking with the seers. Because we remember what it's like to be left alone. You called. No one else came. The seer seemed to absorb that in silence. Her people had mastered diplomacy, science, and peace, but war was a stranger they'd never invited. She looked around, as if seeing her homeworld for the first time through new, brutal eyes. We weren't ready. No one is, Rhea said. But you can be. Within hours, Earth's military engineers, men and women forged in deserts, tundras, and radiation zones, began constructing perimeter defenses. Portable shield arrays unfolded like blooming metal flowers. Auto turrets rotated with predatory grace. Forward medical tents stabilized both human and Vanari wounded, side by side. Valdis observed a human medic cleaning the acid burns of a young Vanari soldier. The woman's hands moved with practiced care, her tone calm even as the patient cried out. Not long ago, the Vanari Council had voted to avoid all contact with humanity. Too violent. Too unpredictable. Now those same humans were saving their sons and daughters. She found Rhea again by the command table, where projected maps shimmered with threat indicators in glowing red clusters. The swarm will return, Valdis said. They always do, Rhea replied. Your people fight like, Valdis hesitated, searching for a word. Like you expect to die. Rhea didn't flinch. That's how we survived Earth. We stopped pretending safety was a birthright. Valdis stared at her. You're not just soldiers. You're weapons. No, Rhea said softly. We're survivors. The first warning came through in a burst of static. One of the outer posts, manned by Vanari volunteers, newly trained by Earth's fire teams, had gone silent. Seconds later, plasma flares lit the horizon. The Razkari were back. Rhea was already moving, issuing commands with clipped precision. Squad Echo, flank their eastern ridge. Sigma, hit hard, fall back, draw them into range of the suppressors. Valdis followed, the words spinning around her like a storm. We don't have enough soldiers. You will, Rhea answered. If they see you standing. If they see you fight. They reached the edge of the Citadel Ridge just as the swarm broke from the forest. Hundreds of them, all legs, pincers, and twitching carapace, rushed forward like a living tide. Their screeches clawed at the air. The Varnari faltered. One young defender froze, his pulse bow taut but useless in shaking hands. Rhea stepped forward, lifted her rifle, and fired a single shot. The lead Razkari exploded in a burst of superheated ichor. She didn't look back. To war, she called. The humans moved with frightening purpose. Where Varnari archers hesitated, humans charged. Where panic bloomed, fire followed. Their formations were fluid, every movement honed by centuries of instinct honed in nightmare terrain. And slowly, the Varnari followed. Not because they were ready, but because the Deathworlders did not leave them behind. By nightfall, the field was littered with the broken bodies of the swarm. The air reeked of acid and ozone. The survivors, human and Varnari alike, stood among the carnage, breathless, blooded, alive. Valdis approached the young archer who had frozen earlier. His hands still shook, but now they held a broken Razkari claw, taken as a trophy. She said nothing, only rested her hand on his shoulder. Later, under the fractured starlight, Rhea stood watch by the barricades. Valdis joined her, eyes scanning the dark. You think they'll come again soon? She asked. Rhea nodded. Sooner than we want. But we'll be ready. A silence passed between them, filled with understanding. They were right to fear you, Valdis said at last. But they were wrong to turn you away. Rhea's eyes narrowed. We're not here to prove them wrong. We're here to prove we're more than they remember. Behind them, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of ash and blood. But also something else. Resolve.
The rains came without warning, acidic and thick, hissing as they met the scorched stone of the outer defenses. Soldiers scrambled to seal their armor joints, while engineers rushed to protect exposed systems. In the makeshift command dome, water dripped steadily from a melted beam, tapping a rhythmic note that felt too much like a countdown. Commander Rhea Kale stood at the center, surrounded by shifting holograms, her eyes scanning the rapidly evolving swarm movement. The Razkari weren't just attacking, they were coordinating. Hive patterns, triangulated strikes, deeper burrowing. It was intelligence, not instinct. And worse, it was adapting. 17 minutes, Lieutenant Mar said grimly, nodding toward the display. That's how long the outer perimeters held during the last push. Rhea's jaw tightened. And the Varnari reinforcements? Still training. They're willing, but most have never even fired a railbow under pressure. We don't need heroes, she replied. We need a wall that doesn't break. He hesitated, then said, There's more. She looked up sharply. Mar pulled up a separate feed, low-resolution scans from a deep cavern beneath the Varnari capital. Structures. A queen node. The signal was faint, but the implication was clear. The Razkari hadn't come for destruction alone. They were nesting. Valdis entered just as the display flickered with the faint biosignature pulses of the queen's presence. Her face paled. They intend to stay. Rhea nodded. It's not a war anymore. It's an infestation. The High Seer stepped closer to the projection. That chamber lies beneath the Temple of First Light. We sealed it ages ago, after the Plague Wars. We believed it dead. Well, Rhea muttered, now it's the heart of your problem. They stood in tense silence until Valdis said, Then we must go down. No, Rhea said. We go down. You'll need a guide. And I won't let my people stay idle while yours bleed. Rhea studied her. The woman's spine was straight, eyes hard. This wasn't the diplomat from the first transmission. This was someone being reforged in fire. She gave a curt nod. Gear up. By nightfall, the team was assembled. 6 humans, 4 Varnari, armed with pulse torches, spore filters, and enough explosive payload to bring down a mountain. The entrance was carved into the base of an old temple, hidden beneath vines and shattered prayer stones. The air grew cold as they descended, thick with fungal musk and the metallic scent of decay. Rhea led, weapon drawn, light sweeping across obsidian tunnels etched with long-forgotten runes. Mar followed, silent and alert. Valdis moved behind them, one hand clutching a light crystal that shimmered against the dark. They found the first body within minutes. Varnari, centuries dead, cocooned in crystallized webbing. His eyes still wide in horror. Rhea didn't pause. Keep moving. The hive grew hotter as they descended. Pulsing veins lined the walls, glowing with rhythmic light, heartbeat of a terrible intelligence. Then they heard it. A sound like breathing, wet and massive, coming from the depth. They entered the chamber. The queen loomed 3 stories tall, her carapace glistening with a resinous sheen, her mouth a mess of spiraling mandibles. Around her, a sea of eggs pulsed with life, and drones scuttled across the walls like shadows. No one moved. Until Valdis whispered, "We are too late." "No," Rhea said. "We're just in time." Mar fired first, a grenade arc searing into the base of the queen's nesting pool. The chamber exploded into chaos. Drones shrieked and charged. The air filled with screeches and plasma fire. Rhea ducked a flurry of acidic spit and returned fire, driving a beam through 2 advancing drones. Valdis took cover behind a pillar, channeling a pulse of kinetic energy from a Varnari focus crystal. It slammed into a charging beast, shattering its thorax. Beside her, a young Varnari fighter, Thalen, roared as he drove his blade into the eye of a drone twice his size. But they were being overwhelmed. "We need to collapse the chamber," Mar shouted over the comms. "Detonate the charges now." Rhea scanned the overhead structure. "It's not enough. We need to bring down the ceiling." Manually, she started toward the load-bearing arch, but a drone lunged. She twisted, fired point-blank, but its claws raked across her shoulder. Armor failed. Blood bloomed. Before the creature could strike again, Valdis leapt from cover, driving her blade into its neck, green-black ichor spraying across her face. Rhea gasped, stunned, then gave a bloody grin. "Didn't expect that." "You humans think we're soft," Valdis growled. Rhea pressed a detonator into her palm. "You up for finishing the job?" Valdis stared at her, then nodded once. "Get your people out." Rhea hesitated, but only for a moment. "Fall back," she barked. The team began to retreat, covering each other in practiced rhythm. Drones fell around them, but more swarmed from the dark. As they reached the exit tunnel, a thunderous roar shook the chamber. Valdis stood in the queen's shadow, bloodied, battered, but unflinching. She slammed the detonator against the support column. A blinding light consumed the hive. They emerged to the surface just as the earth convulsed behind them, a great thunder cracking the night. The temple collapsed in on itself, burying the chamber in rubble and flame. Silence followed. Then, the distant sound of Varnari voices, cheering, mourning, praying. Rhea dropped to one knee, her breath ragged. She stared at the smoke rising from the ruins and whispered, "She made her choice." Mar crouched beside her. "And gave us a chance." Rhea looked up toward the stars. The war wasn't over, but they'd won a heartbeat, and sometimes that was enough. The wind over the ruined capital sang with a strange calm, less a breeze and more a breath the world had been holding for too long. Ash still clung to the air, soft as snow, drifting over jagged towers and broken spires. Yet for the first time since the Raskari descended, there was no scream, no gunfire, no skittering in the dark. Commander Rhea Kale stood at the citadel's edge, watching smoke rise from the collapsed temple where the queen hive had once nested. A black scar on the land, and a grave for the High Seer. "She should have made it out," Mar said, his voice tight behind her. "She knew the odds," Rhea replied. "And she chose to stand. That choice saved thousands." Mar said nothing more. He only looked at the ash-coated skyline, where searchlights scanned for signs of any lingering hive presence. But the drones had scattered. The Queen's death had unraveled their command net, sent them into chaos. For now, they were broken. But Rhea had seen war's rhythms before. This wasn't an ending. It was a pause. The next morning, the Varnari Council met in what remained of their sky dome chambers. Shattered glass and cracked marble surrounded them like a broken crown. Yet they sat, every one of them, as if the weight of their survival demanded it. Rhea stood alone before them, her combat armor dulled from dust and battle scars. Her wounds were bandaged but not hidden. "You were warned," one of the elder speakers said. "We thought Earth too savage to invite. But now I see. We mistook the fire that forges steel as the fire that destroys." "We're not here for apologies," Rhea said. "And we're not looking for praise." "Then why stay?" the elder asked. "The Queen is dead." The threat quelled. "For now." Rhea stepped forward. "Because this isn't over. The swarm may be shattered, but it isn't gone. We found hives embedded in old ruins, buried temples, places even your maps forgot. Something brought them here. Something old, maybe older than your record. And if they came once, they will come again." Another counselor, younger, leaned in. "You mean to say this wasn't chance?" "This was orchestrated." Rhea nodded. "We don't think they chose your world at random. They came for something. And we intend to find out what." Silence fell. Not fear this time, but realization. The Varnari were an old race, proud and elegant, but they had grown distant from hardship. War had been theory. Now it was memory. A fresh one. It was Thalen, young, blooded, changed, who stood from the corner of the chamber. His armor still bore the mark of his first kill, smeared with resin. "Then we fight with you. You didn't just protect us. You taught us how to protect ourselves." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Outside, construction had already begun. Human engineers worked beside Varnari artisans, converting the broken towers into hybrid strongholds. Plasma conduits merged with crystal lattices. Defense grids now stretched beyond the horizon. The two species, so different in history and nature, were building something new together. Later, as dusk fell and the twin moons began their rise, Rhea walked the perimeter with Mar. The air was still warm from the day's effort, the hum of drones, now friendly, lifting supplies to upper platforms. "I keep thinking about Valdis," Mar said. "She wasn't a soldier. Not at first." "She was," Rhea replied, "just hadn't been tested yet. She changed fast. We all did." They reached a lookout post where Thalen stood, silent, staring into the night. He turned as they approached, offering a sharp nod. "Commander. Lieutenant. You holding up?" Rhea asked. He paused, then said, "I dream of the hive. The sounds. The way it felt, fighting something so alien, so wrong." "We all dream of it," she said. "But dreams aren't weakness. They're scars we carry in the quiet." Thalen looked toward the stars. "I never thought we'd owe our survival to Deathworlders." "We're not proud of the name," Rhea said, "but we earned it, and we'll wear it until something better comes along." Thalen turned to her, uncertain. "Do you think it ever will?" Rhea looked at the horizon. In the distance, dawn was already beginning to color the edge of the sky. "It might," she said, "if we build it together." And for a moment, in the stillness, it seemed possible. That from war and ruin, something greater could rise. Not just survival, but alliance.